You know how long it takes to become a financial advisor? 6 weeks. Pass the Series 7, and now you are a financial advisor, capable and legally able to manage people's life savings. You know, took my dog to the dog wash person the other day, and there's a poster in there, and it said, our dog washers have a year and a half of experience before they're allowed to wash dogs. And here's a financial advisor who sits for an exam in 6 weeks, and now is the mentor of your money. It's really astonishing. You know, like we always talk about the hairstylist. It takes a year and a half to become a hairstylist. Problem is, when a hairstylist makes a mistake, the hair grows back. When a financial planner makes a mistake, it doesn't.
For many years, I was doing your traditional financial planning with individuals, pouring graphs, charts, financial plans, showing clients if they continue on the trajectory that they're on, they're going to be bankrupt by the time they're in their mid-60s, or they're not going to have the retirement that they want. And so we'd show them the graphs and the programs and all of that information. But as soon as they left my office, they were on their way to Best Buy to buy a flat screen on a credit card. All that planning that I gave them and I told them, and all the advice and the strategies and the tactics and the tools, do nothing to address the core issue of what's really driving people and why they become broke or why they stay poor, why they continue to live paycheck to paycheck. These beliefs drive people and basically control everything they do, act, and think, and like I said, ultimately become. So from the beliefs, those then turn into excuses, which lead to actions, which end in disastrous results. That's the bear trap, the BEAR, beliefs to excuses to actions to results. I like to do my research and kind of know what's out there, what's being delivered. And so there's a very well-known financial advisor out there, and he's nationwide, and he has local offices everywhere, and he advertises a luncheon seminar. And so I decided to attend. And they don't know I'm a financial planner. I was sitting in the back, and most of the attendees were in their mid to late 60s, if not in their 70s. And you could tell as soon as they walked in the door, they were ready to give their money to the financial advisor. The person speaking was a good-looking guy, and he was a good presenter, given the regular spiel that I've done and everyone else has done on stage. You know, how the markets work and how we invest and all of that kind of stuff. And he was a bit of a character, doing some impressions and some people. I think he did a Jimmy Stewart impression, and he told a couple of jokes. Every single person in the audience signed up for their follow-up meeting. I went to have my personal visit with the local financial advisor, and she had been in the business less than 2 years. So I started peppering her with questions, and she said, wow, no one has ever asked me any of these questions. All she wanted to do was give me her quick spiel. All she was expecting me was just to write a check and say, hey, here you go, manage my money.
Take it, do it for me.
And the fees they were charging were outrageous. And that's the other thing I want to talk about is fees. But before we get there, I after a while, I leaned in and I said, by the way, who was that speaker? He was kind of a character. And she leaned in, she said, don't tell anybody. He's not an advisor. He's a Hollywood actor.
Nearly every state in America is facing a pension shortfall. States have a combined $4.2 trillion in pension liabilities, but less than $3 trillion set aside for the pensions. And the typical state has about 70% of their fund is funded. And with this funding shortfall, we've got 10,000 people hitting 65, which is retirement, every single day. More people leave the plan, that's less money going into the fund. And as those people leave, they're also pulling their money out for their pension. So it's a double-edged sword on these plans. Now we've got, as I said, 10,000 people hitting 65 every single day. That's a lot of people retiring. On top of that, add COVID, and all those people that refuse to get vaccinated for whatever reason, they're being forced out of their employment as well. So it's a huge drain and strain on these funds. I can't tell you how many individuals I've worked with that have pensions, and I'll show them how underfunded their specific pension fund is, and they'll say, it's guaranteed, it's in writing. They promised me that benefit. And I'll tell you, it's a very hard conversation to get people to realize. That law changed in 2014, where now pensions can, under the law, cut benefits when they can prove they're under financial distress. As we see the pension plans disappear or severely being cut to new employees, a lot of companies don't want to offer a defined benefit or pension plan. That's the same term. because they don't want to be on the hook for paying these people for the rest of their lives, especially as life expectancies grow. That's why we've seen this huge shift from pension plans or defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans like 401ks, 457s, or 403bs. So now the individuals are self-reliant on themselves to plan their own retirement rather than rely on a government, state, or private pension. Right now, 78% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, 78%. Then we talk about the three-legged stool, as I often refer to. The three-legged stool in financial planning is the pension, it's the government pension, in our case, Social Security, and it's personal savings.
My role is the cleanup specialist, but by then it's too late.
Yeah.
And it's a really sad situation. People spend more time planning a weekend vacation than they do their financial future or even their financial planner.
I tell people over and over again, I get the emails and the messages from people that are struggling and like, what do I do? And then I try to tell them some things that they should be doing, but it just, they won't do it because they're just fat and happy. They've never been through anything like this. And it was, it always reminds me of what Mark Twain said. He said, no amount of evidence will ever persuade an idiot. Spent years coaching financial advisors, and it's amazing how little they don't know. Most of them are very, very good people. They just don't know what they don't know. It reminds me of a time where I shared an office with an insurance salesman, and suddenly he got his Series 65, which is even less, which is much easier to get than the Series 7, and now he's an investment expert. The four most dangerous words I hear: I trust my advisor.
And be very careful with insurance people. A lot of them are good people, but they believe they can solve every problem in America with insurance. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Couple comes into my office, they're approaching retirement, and they're like, John, we referred to you, or we saw you on TV. We trust you. Here's our money. Just take it. No questions are asked, nothing. I try to explain my philosophy, what I do, what I charge, and they say, John, we trust you. Take our money. And that happens over and over again. That's the chicken dinner syndrome, right? Couple gets invited to the free chicken dinner, and they're just wowed by the presentation and the free dinner. And before the presentation's over, they're willing to hand over all their money to this stranger without any due diligence. It's an absolute mess. Traditional rules that we were taught, that I was taught back in the day by the best firm on Wall Street, was buy and hold, stay for the long term. It's not timing, it's time in the market. Those are the cliches that we were taught, because they don't want us taking our clients' money out of the market, because then there's no revenue, right? There's no assets under management. These are the commercials you see on television, right? We're different. We're fiduciaries. We don't charge. It's all nonsense. Assets under management is basically an investment firm or a financial advisor that's trying to gather as much assets as they possibly can, manage those in the stock and bond market, and then charge an asset-based fee doing that. They don't do anything different than any other financial manager. No financial manager, asset managers charge commissions. They say, well, you don't charge. They're a fiduciary, which is total nonsense. That word is so overplayed. It's basically a marketing tool for financial advisors. I can clearly show that you'd be more safe working with a non-fiduciary than you would with a fiduciary. And by the way, this whole fiduciary word, the biggest financial scam in world history was Bernie Madoff, and he was a fiduciary.
Yeah, this idea that they do things differently and, we're fiduciaries, therefore we're holier than thou, couldn't be more dangerous information sharing to the client. I mean, this whole fiduciary thing is an absolute myth, and it's misleading people to commit all their hard-earned money with somebody just because they're a fiduciary. The financial advisor is held to a higher standard. They're working in their client's best interest versus a non-fiduciary who's working who's offering advice that's suitable. Now, certainly best interest sounds much better than suitable, but when you boil it down, all you're really talking about is your ability to sue the advisor versus not. I can tell you, I can make a very strong argument that you are in much better and safer hands with a non-fiduciary than you are a fiduciary. Oh. And I'm not saying one is bad or the other. It really depends on the advisor, but there is far more oversight and regulatory compliance with a non-fiduciary than there is a fiduciary. Anyone could open up an investment advisory firm and be a fiduciary. I mean, it's really that easy.
But I will tell you, the fiduciary advisor It's the Wild West. There's very little oversight as a fiduciary. You're your own compliance manager. You can invest in anything. No one monitors what you say, what you send, what you present. It's like I said, it's very much the Wild West.
10,000 baby boomers are turning 65, and 7 out of 10 people will require long-term care in their lifetime. 7 out of 10, that's 70%. And of those who need it, on average, they need it for 2 years. 20% need it for 5 years. For a semi-private room, you're looking at $79,000 per year. That's on average. A private room is about $96,000. And using our lovely home state of Hawaii, semi-private rooms, $150,000 per year, and a private room's $170,000 per year. 66% of caregivers use their own retirement and savings funds to pay for this. And within a year, it could just be wiped out. When you consider the average 401k balance for someone 65 or older is about $250,000, that could be wiped out in a year or year and a half. The classic quote I see often, it's a cartoon. It's a husband and wife talking about their retirement. They said, well, honey, if we just delay our retirement and have an early death, we'll be just fine. The type of insurance that you would need is basically a long-term care policy. And there are all kinds of long-term care policies with all different types of bells and whistles. But on average, on the low end, you'd be looking at something that would cost about $900 a year. And then it's unlimited on the upside in terms of premium based on daily amounts that you want to cover yourself for, and then a maximum cap on how much you want to cover yourself for. But Medicare does not cover you for long-term care. Medicare only kicks in when you've been hospitalized and you've been in the hospital for 3 days, and you're admitted to a Medicare facility within 30 days of your prior hospital stay. Medicaid, on the other hand, is when you have no assets. You basically you've drawn down your assets, your savings to $2,000 or less. That's when you would qualify for a government-run facility. It's a joint federal and state assistance program that finances healthcare for low-income people. It's really just a skilled nursing facility. And again, this is not where you want to end up for the remaining years. And you could be in this facility forever.
Everyone's financially illiterate, and it just transfers down to generation after generation after generation. That's the problem. And people assume everything's going to be right. I mean, we talked about United Airlines. I worked with flight attendants, pilots, and high-level executives at United Airlines. And they all thought, this is United Airlines. Are you kidding me? This is the greatest airline on the planet. We're worldwide. We're going to be traveling, transporting people forever. And then what? 9/11 hit. And all chips were off the table. I had a very high-level executive as a client at United Airlines. And they spent money like they were invincible. And then again, 9/11 hit, they had employee stock options. They were ruined. We've seen the market come back quite a bit since COVID. And it's really because the Fed's been printing monopoly money. And the stock market's just betting on the Fed to continue to do so. I see a train wreck coming at the end of this month, if not early August, when you have the $600 a week benefit ending, student debt relief ending, mortgage debt relief ending, and this COVID crisis, which the media will not let go. I see a collision course headed in the market very soon. And that's going to affect, again, of course, the pensions, but of course also 401k balances as well. So this false sense that your 401k balance has increased, I would just be very prepared for what's about to happen. I've done a lot of pension consulting, working with company pensions, nonprofit organizations, and union plans. They'd hire me to either provide overall consulting or manage a sleeve of their investments. Most of the investment committee have no idea. They have no knowledge of investments. They couldn't tell the difference between a stock and a bond. And too many times they get together on a quarterly basis for one big boondoggle. It's a nice fancy lunch, and then they go off and play golf. And almost every single time when I came and I had to present the performance of the portion that I was managing, I can't tell you how many times I was told, hey, John, you've got 2 minutes for your report because we've got a tea time at noon. The amount of mismanagement of these funds, like Ted says, is just criminal in my opinion. And it's only going to get worse.
So people really need to really think about what they're doing, and they cannot just leave it up to hope. I've heard too many people say, well, I just hope it works out. I'll tell you, hope is not a retirement strategy.